Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we're going to get into something we all deal with, right? People.
Yeah, people.
And not just people in general, but like real-world relationships. The good, the bad, the ones that make you scratch your head sometimes.
You all got a few of those.
We're diving into this book all about understanding those real-world relationships, especially the difficult ones.
Okay, so what makes some relationships so hard?
Well, one of the first things the book dives into is this idea that, not all friendships are created equal.
Makes sense. You don't treat your boss the same way you treat your best friend.
Exactly. And the book calls this the 3 spheres of friendship.
3 spheres of friendship. Okay, I'm listening.
So first, there's the intimate sphere. These are your ride or dies, those close friends, the ones you can trust with anything.
Got it. Your inner circle.
Then there's the necessary sphere. These are still important relationships, but they're not necessarily in that inner circle.
Like who?
Think of a close colleague, a supportive neighbor, or someone you connect with through a shared hobby.
Okay, yeah, they enrich your life in different ways.
And then you've got the strategic sphere. These are relationships that are mutually beneficial, but they serve a specific purpose.
Strategic? Like what kind of purpose?
Think about collaborators on a project, mentors who are guiding you, even someone who helps you reach a goal.
Interesting. I like this framework. It makes you think about the roles different people play in your life.
And the book really emphasizes that. It tells this story about a woman who had a strong strategic friendship with a colleague. They were both super ambitious, always pushing each other to succeed.
Sounds healthy.
It was, but outside of work, they weren't close at all. Different lifestyles, different interests. But by recognizing this as a strategic friendship, she could appreciate it for what it was without expecting something.
Right. It's about valuing each relationship for its own unique purpose, rather than trying to fit everyone into the same mold.
Absolutely. Now, on top of that, the book talks about these 2 other interesting categories of people, incontornables and contornables.
Incontornables, what's that?
Think of those people you simply can't avoid no matter how much you might want to sometimes.
Oh yeah, I definitely know a few of those.
We all do. Often these are family members, but they can also be colleagues, or even those neighbors you can't seem to escape.
So you're stuck with them, like it or not?
Pretty much. And to illustrate this, the book actually uses some examples from the Bible.
Bible examples. Okay, I'm curious.
Like there's the story of Joseph, who was straight up betrayed by his brothers, but ultimately he forgave them.
Powerful stuff.
And then there's David, who was constantly mocked by his own brothers, but he still rose to become king.
Wow. Talk about overcoming adversity.
Even Noah, his own son, exposed his embarrassing moment. But Noah still kept going, kept leading.
Those are some heavy hitters.
Yeah.
It sounds like these incontornables can really test your patience.
They can. And the book emphasizes that these relationships can be the most emotionally charged. It's not about finding easy answers or quick fixes. It's about finding a path toward acceptance.
So it's more about managing those relationships rather than trying to change them.
Exactly. And not getting stuck in those cycles of conflict and resentment.
Makes sense. So what about those contornables? What makes them different?
While contornables are the difficult people you actually can choose to navigate around.
So you're saying it's okay to set boundaries, to create some distance.
The book is all about that. It calls this flexibility the art of maneuvering gracefully around obstacles.
I like that, flexibility. So how do you actually do that? How do you become more flexible in those tough relationships?
Well, the book says it starts with emotional maturity, learning to not react impulsively.
So taking a moment before you say or do something you might regret later.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the power of strategic silence. Sometimes the best response is no response at all.
I can see how that would be helpful, especially when you're dealing with someone who's trying to provoke you.
And then there's compassion. Using compassion as a tool to disarm negativity.
Compassion for someone who's being difficult. How does that work?
There's this great story about a guy having a frustrating interaction with a grumpy cashier. Instead of matching that negativity, the author just smiled, made a kind comment about the weather, and wished the cashier a better day.
I'm guessing that didn't go as expected.
The cashier was completely thrown off guard by the unexpected kindness. He actually apologized for being rude, and the rest of the interaction was smooth sailing.
Wow. So a little bit of kindness can go a long way.
Absolutely. Now, let's switch gears a bit and talk about relationships, specifically marriage. The book has a whole section called the 2-in-1 theory, and it's pretty fascinating.
2-in-1 theory, okay? I'm intrigued.
It's all about the idea that in a marriage, 2 people truly become one. And get this, the book uses a filmmaking analogy to illustrate this.
A filmmaking analogy for marriage. Okay, you've got my attention.
So, the book argues that just like a successful film requires careful planning, a strong script, a skilled director, and a talented cast, A lasting marriage needs that same level of effort.
So it's not just about finding the right person, but about actively working to build a strong relationship.
Exactly. The book stresses the importance of choosing your partner carefully, of course, but it also says you have to shift from that single mindset to a partnership mindset.
Meaning you put the relationship above your individual.
You got it. And it's about actively nurturing the relationship, being intentional about spending quality time together, making those emotional deposits.
Makes sense, but we all know relationships can be tough, even with the best intentions.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why the book dives into the importance of open and honest communication, aligning those expectations, talking about your needs and desires, addressing those conflicts constructively.
Communication is key, but sometimes those conversations can be difficult, right? Especially when you're dealing with sensitive subjects. How do you approach those without making things worse?
Well, there's this really interesting story in the book about a couple who had totally different definitions of fidelity. For the wife, it was all about physical intimacy. But for the husband, it was more about emotional and sharing his deepest secrets.
Ooh, that sounds like a recipe for trouble if they weren't on the same page.
Exactly. They had a huge fight because the husband had been confiding in a female colleague about his work frustrations and his dream. He didn't see it as cheating, but his wife felt totally...
It highlights the importance of talking about those things early on, defining those expectations and boundaries, making sure you're both on the same page.
Exactly. The book also talks about these emotional thieves that we encounter in all areas of life. Those people who just drain your energy and joy. Ever come across one of those?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all have it some. There are those people who just seem to suck the joy out of every room.
And the book breaks them down into two categories: the disinterested and the intentional.
The disinterested and the intentional. What's the difference?
So the disinterested are just negative by nature. They love gossip, bad news, complaining.
Perpetual downers. Got it. What about the intentional ones?
The intentional thieves are driven by envy. They want to see you fail, or at least they feel the need to diminish your success.
Those can be tough to deal with because their negativity can be disguised as concern or advice.
You're telling me. The book says comparison plays a big role in fueling these negative emotions.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, comparing ourselves to others and feeling inadequate.
Right. And the book suggests a powerful antidote to envy: gratitude. When we focus on what we have, what we're grateful for, it shifts our perspective and minimizes those feelings of lack.
Gratitude is definitely a game changer. But what about those times when it's hard to feel grateful, especially when you're surrounded by negativity?
That's where boundaries come in. The book emphasizes the importance of being selective about who we allow into our inner circle.
So it's not about cutting people out of our lives entirely, but about being mindful of who we give our energy to.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our energy is precious and we have a right to protect our peace.
I love that. Protecting our peace. Do you have any tips for setting those boundaries? I mean, it can be tough to say no to people, especially if you don't want to hurt their feelings.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely a skill that takes practice. The book has a whole section on effective communication strategies, but one simple thing you can do is to start saying no more often.
Just flat out say no.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be rude. Just be firm and polite.
I'm going to try that. What about dealing with those intentional thieves, the ones who are driven by envy? Any tips for handling them?
One of the best strategies is to simply avoid engaging with them. Don't feed their need for attention.
So if someone is trying to one-up you or put you down, just don't take the bait.
Exactly. Just smile politely and change the subject.
I can do that. It's like that saying, kill them with kindness.
There's a story in the book about a successful author who had just signed a big book deal. He's super excited and wanted to celebrate by buying a fancy car.
I can relate to that. A new car is always a fun way to celebrate a win.
Right. But then he realized that showing off his success might trigger envy in his peers, especially those who were struggling.
That's a really thoughtful perspective.
So he decided to buy a more practical car instead, a less fun.
He prioritized his peace of mind and the well-being of his relationships over making a statement.
Exactly. It was about recognizing that humility and consideration for others would ultimately bring him more lasting.
That's a great reminder that sometimes less is more.
Oh, I have to tell you this quick story. The author was at the airport and some random guy recognized him. The guy saw that he was flying economy class and made this snarky comment like, "Must be tough to be a best-selling author and still have to fly economy."
Ugh, people can be so rude.
I know, but the author just chuckled and said, "Hey, I'm just grateful to be flying at all."
Perfect response.
Right, it totally disarmed the situation. Okay, so before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on two more concepts that the book really dives in: the power of a smile and the importance of forgiveness.
A smile and forgiveness. Those sound simple enough. I'm curious to hear what the book has to say about them. So a smile and forgiveness. What's the big deal?
Well, the book dives into how powerful a smile can be. It goes way beyond just, being an expression of happiness.
Oh, who so?
It argues that a smile can actually be a tool for your own well-being and a way to influence others.
So are you saying smiling can actually make you happier, not just the other way around?
Exactly. Smiling, even when you don't feel like it, can release endorphins. You know, those feel-good chemicals in your brain.
Right, endorphins. I've even heard that smiling can lower your stress levels.
Yeah, the book talks about that too, how smiling can, physically calm you down. It even says a smile can be contagious. Have you ever noticed that?
Well, yeah, for sure. Like if you see someone grinning ear to ear, you can't help but smile back.
And it can really lighten things up, especially in tense situations. It kind of signals that you're open and friendly.
I like that. A smile can be like a little peace offering.
There's this story in the book about a CEO, a super smart guy, but he was known for being really serious, almost intimidating, and he never smiled.
Sounds intense.
One day, his team had the guts to give him some feedback.
I bet that was a tough conversation.
They basically told him that he never smiles, and it made him seem unapproachable.
Oh, wow. I wonder how we reacted.
He took it well, actually. He made a conscious effort to smile more. And you know what?
Good.
His team loved it. They said he became more relatable, easier to talk to, communication got better, morale improved. It's amazing how such a little thing can make such a difference.
It really is. I'm going to make a point of smiling more, even when I'm stressed.
Me too. Now, let's talk about forgiveness. The book ties forgiveness directly to your emotional and spiritual health.
Okay, so how does forgiveness work?
The book uses this analogy. It says, holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison, but expecting the other person to die.
Oh, that's a good...
It makes the point that unforgiveness hurts you more than it hurts the other person.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
But so true. The book dives into this story from the Bible about the woman who was caught in adultery.
Right, the one where they wanted to stone her.
And Jesus says, let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Powerful stuff.
The book emphasizes that forgiveness isn't about saying what the other person did was okay. It's about releasing those negative emotions that are weighing.
So it's more about choosing peace for yourself rather than condoning bad behavior.
Exactly. And the book acknowledges that forgiveness can be a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Wow. Have you ever had to forgive someone who really hurt you? How did you deal?
Yeah, I have. It was tough. But I finally realized that holding on to that anger wasn't doing me any good. It was just making me miserable.
It's like we punish ourselves by holding on to that resentment. The book lays out this trifecta of emotional expertise. It calls them the 3 pillars for getting through tough situations.
3 pillars. Okay, lay them on me.
The first one, prayer.
Prayer. Interesting. I wasn't expecting that from a book about relationships.
I know, right? But the book frames prayer not as a religious thing necessarily, but as a way to tap into something bigger than you, like a source of strength.
So, even if you're not religious, it can be helpful to connect with something greater, something outside of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. The book says that prayer can help you cultivate patience, compassion, understanding. Those qualities are essential when you're dealing with.
It's a reminder that you don't have to go through things alone. So what's pillar number 2?
That one is emotional intelligence.
Okay, that one makes sense. It's about knowing yourself, your emotions, and understanding how other people are feeling.
The book connects emotional intelligence with the fruit of the spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, all those good things.
All the stuff that makes for healthy relationships.
Exactly. And then the third pillar is direct communication, but not aggressive.
So it's about expressing yourself clearly and honestly, but in a way that doesn't escalate the conflict.
The book has some great tips for having those tough conversations, like using I statements, focusing on how you feel rather than blaming the other person, finding that common ground.
I like that. It's about seeking understanding rather than trying to win an argument.
To illustrate these 3 pillars in action, the book uses the story of David forgiving
Shimei. Wasn't he the guy who cursed David while he was fleeing from his son?
That's him. David's men wanted to fight back, but David stopped them. He actually forgave Shimei.
That takes a lot of strength, especially in that kind of situation.
It really does, and it's a perfect example of those pillars where David prayed for guidance, he managed his own anger, he chose to communicate with in a way that de-escalated the whole thing.
It's a great reminder that we always have a choice in how we respond.
And you know what's crazy? Shimei ended up repenting and helping David regain the throne.
Wow. That's a powerful testament to the power of forgiveness.
It really is. What do you think? Do those three pillars resonate with you? I mean, do you see them as valuable tools for dealing with difficult people in your own life?
Oh, absolutely. I think the book does a fantastic job of combining spiritual principles with emotional intelligence and, just practical communication advice.
And one thing I really appreciate is that it's not presenting this perfect, unrealistic picture of how relationships should be.
It feels really grounded and honest.
Yeah.
Like it acknowledges that relationships can be messy and challenging.
But at the same time, it's hopeful. It gives you actual tools to work with to navigate those challenges with grace and wisdom.
It's a great reminder that we're all works in progress. Relationships take effort. And becoming, an emotional specialist, it's a journey, not a destination.
So what's the big takeaway? What's that thought-provoking question that sticks with you?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, what if we actually approached all our relationships with that mind?
It would be a game changer, wouldn't it?
Instead of bracing ourselves for potential drama or disappointment, we walk in expecting something good.
And the book argues that this shift in thinking can have a ripple effect, leading to more genuine connections, more fulfilling collaborations.
And maybe even a deeper sense of purpose in our own lives.
Exactly. Instead of seeing people as potential problems, we start to see them as, potential partners in this crazy thing called life.
I love that. Partners, not problems.
But, the book also acknowledges that not every relationship is meant to last forever.
Right. Some relationships have an expiration date.
Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, it's just healthier to create some distance. Set some boundaries with those people who constantly drain your energy.
It's like that saying, not my circus, not my monkeys.
The book actually has a great line about that. It says, celebrate those who enter your life and don't complain about those who...
That's a good one.
It's about recognizing that every relationship has a reason, a purpose.
Some people are meant to be in our lives for the long haul. Others are just passing through.
And learning to let go gracefully, to release those relationships that no longer serve us, well, that's just as important as nurturing the ones that do.
So when it comes to navigating this whole messy world of relationships, where do we even begin?
For me, it all comes down to becoming more intense, more aware of our own emotions and, our motivations, and definitely more skilled at communicating our needs clearly and respectfully.
It's like we're all on this journey of self-discovery and learning how to connect with others in a more authentic way.
And every interaction, even the tough one, can teach us something valuable. It's an opportunity to practice those.
Absolutely. And to remember that we're not alone in this. There's always a source of strength we can tap into, whether it's through prayer, meditation, or just surrounding ourselves with good people.
So to our listeners out there, keep exploring these ideas, keep practicing, keep learning. And remember, the people in your life, they're not liabilities, they're assets.
They're opportunities for growth, for connection, for joy, even when they drive you crazy.
Thanks for diving deep with us today, everyone. Until next time.